My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 31. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who measures love in bank transfers and voicemail frequency, but here we are. 8 months ago, if someone had asked me about my life, I would have said it was steady. Not perfect, but solid. I'd been with my boyfriend, Ryan, 29, for 2 years. We moved in together about 8 months back. The usual adjustments, splitting rent, arguing over groceries, figuring out whose turn it was to clean. But nothing that felt like a warning sign. Then, my dad was diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer 6 months ago, and everything shifted. Cancer isn't just a medical condition. It's a constant presence. It lives in hospital waiting rooms, in the smell of disinfectant, in the way your phone tightens your chest every time it rings. My dad went through chemo every few weeks. Radiation. Medications with side effects they warn you about but never fully prepare you for. Insurance helped, but anyone who's dealt with cancer knows the truth. The bills never stop. Deductibles, co-pays, meds insurance doesn't cover. Expenses that stack up quietly until they're suffocating. My dad couldn't work anymore. He was exhausted, weak, still trying to act like he had everything under control. So I helped. I sent him between $800 and $200 a month, depending on what he needed. Enough to keep him afloat. Enough so he didn't have to choose between medication and groceries. That night, I was doing it again. His chemo session was coming up, and the anti-nausea medication wasn't covered. He tried to brush it off on the phone, said he'd manage, but his voice gave him away. So I sat on the edge of our bed, phone in hand, transferring $900. Ryan walked into the room just as I hit send. I saw his expression change immediately. His jaw tightened. His eyes dropped to my screen. Seriously, he said. Again? I looked up at him. Dad's chemo is coming up. The meds. And how much this time, he cut in. $900. He let out a short laugh. Not amused. Not kind. $900 to your dad, he said. Meanwhile, we're eating ramen half the week because you keep saying we're broke. I stared at him. We're not eating ramen because of my dad. Stop, he said, lifting a hand. Just stop. He sat down across from me, arms crossed, like he'd already decided how this conversation would end. I need you to actually hear me, he said. Your father is not our responsibility. He's a grown man. He made his choices. My stomach dropped. We have our own future, he continued. We talked about buying a house next year. That down payment doesn't save itself. Every dollar you send him is a dollar we don't have for us. He's sick, I said. He needs help. So let someone else help him, Ryan replied immediately. Doesn't he have siblings, extended family? Why does it all fall on you? Because I'm his daughter, I said. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Listen to me carefully, he said. If you keep putting him before us, before our future, this relationship is over. I'm done playing second fiddle to a dying man's medical bills. The room went completely still. Then he added, almost casually, You said stage 3, right? Those aren't great odds. Something inside me shut down. Not anger, not tears. Cold clarity. You're right, I said quietly. Ryan blinked. What? You're right about priorities, I repeated. I need to think about what I'm investing in. His posture relaxed instantly. Relief washed over his face like he'd won. Thank God, he said. I know that was hard to hear, but you needed to hear it. He grabbed his jacket. I'm going for a walk. And he left. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat there, staring at the wall, replaying his words until they lost all ambiguity. What he said about my dad was unforgivable. But it also forced me to look at something else. Money. Here's the part that matters. When Ryan and I met, he already had $67,000 in student loans, private loans, high interest. He'd been making minimum payments for years, barely touching the principal. About 13 months ago, he had a breakdown about it. Sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, voice tight, talking about how he'd never get ahead, how he'd be paying loans into middle age. I made more money than he did. I felt bad, so I offered to help, temporarily. We agreed I'd cover his monthly payment, $580, until he got ahead financially. We even wrote it down. Nothing legal, but clear enough. Except he never paid me back. Not once. For 13 straight months, that payment left my account like clockwork. And now he was telling me my dying father wasn't our responsibility. The next morning, before work, I logged into my bank account and canceled the automatic payment. No announcement, no argument, just stopped. A couple days later, I was doing laundry and found a receipt in his jeans. Nike, $340. 2 days after he told me we were eating ramen. That's when I started paying attention. Ryan's Venmo was public, always had been. Brunch with friends, $75. Concert tickets, $120. New running shoes, $95. All in the last couple of weeks. That weekend, he wanted to order Thai food. Our usual spot runs about $50. Can we just make something here? I asked, trying to save money. He rolled his eyes. Don't be dramatic, it's $50. You told me we were broke, I said. That was different, he replied. You were sending thousands to your dad. 800, I corrected. Whatever, just order the food. I'm good with a sandwich, I said. He looked at me like I was being unreasonable, then ordered anyway, using my credit card. Tuesday came. His loan servicer tried to pull the payment. Declined. Wednesday, his phone rang while he was in the living room. I was in the kitchen and heard everything. What do you mean it bounced? He said sharply. It's automatic. A pause. Yes, I understand there's a late fee. He hung up and immediately called me at work. I let it ring. Then a text. Call me now. Emergency. I waited an hour before calling back. My loan payment didn't go through, he said immediately. The bank says the automatic payment was canceled. Did you do something? Yes, I said calmly. I stopped paying your loans. Silence. You what? You said we needed to prioritize our future, I replied. So I am. Your loans aren't my responsibility. That's completely different, he snapped. I'm your boyfriend. We live together. And he's my father, I said. He has cancer. When are you turning the payment back on? I'm not. You make $52,000 a year, I continued. You can cover your own loans. I can barely afford my car and rent. Then maybe don't spend $300 at Nike. Dead silence. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't about money. It was about entitlement. I didn't confront him right away. That was the strange part. If this had happened earlier in our relationship, I would have demanded an explanation the moment I found that receipt. I would have asked questions. I would have tried to understand his side. I would have looked for a version of the story where no one was the villain. But something had shifted. Once you hear someone reduce your parents' life to odds and inconvenience, a lot of noise fades away. You stop reacting. You start observing. So I watched. I watched how Ryan moved through the apartment in the days after the payment bounced, how he still acted like nothing fundamental had changed, how he complained about work, about traffic, about the gym being crowded, normal, everyday annoyances, while the consequences of his own choices were quietly lining up. He didn't mention the late fee again that first night, didn't ask if it was a mistake, didn't apologize. He just assumed I'd fix it the same way I always had. That assumption sat heavy in my chest. The more I paid attention, the clearer the pattern became. He still stopped for coffee every morning, not the cheap kind, the kind with oat milk and extra shots. Still met friends for brunch on weekends. Still talked about concerts he wanted to go to before prices go up. All the while reminding me, casually, repeatedly, that we needed to be careful with money. One night, he came home carrying a shopping bag, set it down by the door like it was nothing. What did you get? I asked. Just some stuff, he said, already walking toward the bedroom. I didn't press. Later, while he showered, I checked his Venmo again. Another charge, another night out, another payment that could have gone toward his loans. That's when it really sank in. Ryan wasn't broke. He was subsidized. There's a difference. Subsidized people don't feel urgency. They don't feel pressure. They don't feel the weight of consequences because someone else is quietly absorbing the impact. They talk about being stressed about money while refusing to change a single comfort. I thought back to all the conversations we'd had over the past year. Him saying things like, once the loans are under control, I'll start saving. Or, I just need a little breathing room. Or my favorite, this is temporary. Temporary had turned into 13 months. And now, the moment I redirected that money to my father, who was fighting for his life, Ryan had decided I was the problem. That weekend, he started testing boundaries. Not directly, not yet. Little comments. Must be nice not worrying about loans anymore, he said one evening, half joking, half resentful. I didn't respond. You know they're going to keep calling, he added. That's how they are. I know, I said. He watched me, like he was waiting for guilt to kick in, for me to flinch. I didn't. Monday morning, his phone started ringing more often. Unknown numbers, local area codes, numbers that left no voicemail. He silenced them during breakfast, jaw tight. They won't stop, he muttered. It's ridiculous. They're doing their job, I said, spreading peanut butter on toast. You owe them money. He shot me a look. You don't have to sound so smug about it. I'm not smug, I replied. I'm factual. That afternoon, he texted me screenshots of emails from the loan servicer. Bold subject lines, late payment warnings, a notice about credit reporting. I read them, didn't reply. When I got home, he was pacing the living room. This is getting serious, he said. They're talking about reporting it to the credit bureaus. Okay, I said, setting my bag down. Okay? he repeated. That's it? Okay. What do you want me to say? That you'll help me, he snapped. That we'll figure this out together. The words hung there. Together. I did help you, I said calmly, for over a year. That was before, he shot back, before you decided to punish me. I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm following the priorities you set. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. You're twisting this. No, I replied. I'm applying it consistently. That night he slept restlessly, tossed, checked his phone every time it buzzed. At one point he got up and went to the couch. I stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about my dad's last appointment, about how tired he looked, about how he'd tried to joke with the nurse to hide how scared he was. The contrast was unbearable. Within a week, the calls became relentless. Every couple of hours, different numbers, different voices, same script. Ryan stopped answering. He started letting them go to voicemail, the phone vibrating on the table like a trapped insect. They're threatening legal action, he said one night, voice strained. Then set up a payment plan, I said. I tried, he replied. They want the full amount plus late fees. How much? $640, he said, right now. I nodded. That sounds right. He stared at me. You don't care. I care about my father, I said. And I care about not being manipulated. He pulled out his laptop and opened a spreadsheet. Rows highlighted in different colors. Categories broken down neatly. Look, he said, turning it toward me. After rent, car, insurance, groceries, I'm negative $300 a month. And that's without the loan payment. I looked at it carefully. You've got Spotify Premium, Netflix, HBO, and Hulu, I said. That's almost $50. Those are necessities, he replied immediately. Your car payment is $480, I continued. That's a nice car. I need it for work. You work downtown, there's a bus. I'm not taking the bus, he snapped. And there it was, the line he wouldn't cross. Not cutting subscriptions, not downsizing the car, not changing habits. Just asking me to step back in and absorb the damage. You're not broke, I said quietly. You're just unwilling to change. He slammed the laptop shut. You're really going to let my credit get destroyed over this? I'm not doing anything, I replied. You're making choices. The calls didn't stop. They rang during dinner, during movies, late at night, early in the morning. Ryan stopped sleeping well, started snapping over small things, left dishes in the sink, then complained when I didn't clean them. One night, his phone rang at midnight. He didn't answer. The voicemail came through anyway, a flat professional voice explaining next steps. He stared at the wall afterward, silent. This is ruining my life, he said. I thought about my father, hooked up to machines, fighting nausea and fatigue just to survive another week. This didn't ruin your life, I said. It exposed it. He turned to me sharply. You're enjoying this. No, I said. I'm done rescuing you. That was the night I realized something else. Ryan didn't miss me. He missed the version of me that paid his bills without asking him to grow up. And that version wasn't coming back. By the start of week 2, the tone shifted. Not in anything Ryan said. He was still cycling between irritation and forced calm, but in how he moved. He checked his phone constantly now, not casually, not out of boredom, with tension, with dread. Every unknown number made his shoulders tighten. Every voicemail notification made his jaw clench. That Monday morning, he didn't finish his coffee, just stared at it while his phone buzzed again on the counter. Aren't you going to answer? I asked. He shook his head. It's them. They'll keep calling, I said. I know, he snapped. That's the problem. He left for work already irritated, slamming the door harder than necessary. I watched him go, feeling oddly detached, like I was observing someone else's life instead of living inside it. Around noon, my phone buzzed. Ryan, they're saying this is officially delinquent now. I read it. Didn't reply. 10 minutes later. Ryan, Claire, this is serious. They're talking about reporting it. Still nothing from me. Another buzz. Ryan, why are you doing this? That one lingered. Because the truth was, I wasn't doing anything. I had simply stopped doing something I never should have been responsible for in the first place. When I got home that evening, Ryan was already there, standing in the living room, phone in hand, pacing. They called my work number today, he said the moment I walked in, during a meeting. I set my bag down. Okay. My boss noticed, he continued, asked if everything was all right. That's unfortunate, I said evenly. He stopped pacing and stared at me. Unfortunate? Yes. You don't think that's a problem? I think ignoring debt tends to create problems, I replied. His nostrils flared. I didn't ignore it. You pulled the rug out from under me. I gave you 13 months of notice, I said. You just didn't listen. That's not the same thing, he snapped. You knew I couldn't handle it all at once. And you knew my dad was sick, I replied. Yet you still gave me an ultimatum. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. For a split second, I thought he might actually reflect. Instead, he went on the offensive. "You're punishing me for being honest," he said. "I told you how I felt about our finances. That's what couples do." "No," I corrected. "Couples don't threaten each other when one person refuses to abandon their parent." "That's not what I said." "You said prioritizing my father was stupid because his odds weren't good." "I was stressed," he shot back. "People say things they don't mean when they're stressed." "And I did something I do mean," I replied. "I stopped paying debt that isn't mine." He laughed sharply. "You're acting like this is some moral stand." "It is," I said, "just not the one you want." That night, the calls didn't stop. Different numbers. Same cadence. Every couple of hours, like clockwork. Ryan tried answering one. Put it on speaker without meaning to. A calm voice explained missed payments, late fees, potential next steps. Ryan cut the call off mid-sentence. "This is harassment," he said, rubbing his face. "It's accountability," I replied. He looked at me like I'd slapped him. "You've changed," he said. "No," I said quietly. "I stopped enabling you." That word landed hard. "Enabling," he repeated bitterly. "You think you were enabling me?" "Yes." "For loving me?" "For protecting you from consequences," I corrected. He scoffed. "You sound like a therapist." "I sound like someone who finally woke up." The next morning he was quiet. Too quiet. Didn't argue. Didn't complain. Didn't bring up money. He made breakfast, cleaned the counter, kissed my cheek before leaving for work. The shift was obvious and unsettling. That evening, he tried a softer approach. "I've been thinking," he said casually, sitting beside me on the couch. "Maybe we both said things we didn't mean." I kept my eyes on the TV. Maybe. "I shouldn't have phrased it the way I did about your dad," he continued. "That came out wrong." "It didn't come out wrong," I said. "It came out honest." He winced slightly, then reached for my hand. "Claire," he said, voice low, "I love you. I don't want money to destroy what we have." I pulled my hand back. "Money didn't do this," I replied. "Character did." His jaw tightened. "You're really going to die on this hill?" he asked. "I didn't choose the hill," I said. "You pushed me onto it." The phone rang again. He glanced at it, then silenced it without answering. "This is getting out of control," he muttered. "It was always out of control," I replied. "You just didn't feel it until now." That was the moment something else surfaced. Not anger. Fear. Ryan wasn't afraid of losing me. He was afraid of losing the financial cushion he'd built his life around. And once I saw that clearly, there was no unseeing it. The shift came fast. Too fast. One day, Ryan was angry and defensive, snapping every time his phone buzzed. The next, he was gentle, almost careful, like someone walking across thin ice, testing each step before committing his weight. That alone told me everything. Men don't pivot like that unless fear is driving. He came home early that Thursday, earlier than usual. I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables when I heard the door open. "Hey," he said, softer than he'd sounded in days. I glanced up. "Hey!" He hovered for a moment, then set a grocery bag on the counter. Real groceries this time. Not delivery, not takeout. "I picked up stuff to cook tonight," he said. "Thought we could just stay in." I nodded, non-committal. He watched me, waiting for warmth. When he didn't get it, he tried something else. "I've been thinking about what you said," he began, "about enabling." I kept chopping. "I don't think it's fair to say I was using you," he added quickly. "I mean, we agreed on the loan thing together." "We agreed you'd pay me back," I replied. "You never did." "That doesn't mean I wouldn't have," he said. "Things just got in the way." I set the knife down and finally looked at him. "What things?" I asked. He opened his mouth, closed it, then shrugged. "Life." That was the problem. Life had always been an excuse that only flowed in one direction. That night, he cooked dinner, cleaned up afterward, even did the dishes without being asked. When we sat on the couch, he leaned closer than usual, shoulder brushing mine. "I miss us," he said quietly. I didn't respond. He took that as an invitation instead of a boundary. "I hate that we're fighting like this," he continued. "I just want things to go back to how they were." There it was. Not better, not healthier, just back. "How they were worked for you," I said. "Not for me." He stiffened. "That's not fair." "It's accurate." He exhaled slowly, like he was trying to stay calm. "You know, my ex, Trish, used to say stuff like this too." I turned my head. "Excuse me?" "She was always big on boundaries," he said, waving a hand. "Always making everything about principles instead of compromise." Something cold slid down my spine. "That's interesting," I said carefully, "because last I checked, you called her too controlling and impossible to please." Ryan shrugged. "I was younger then." "So was she," I thought, "and somehow still expected more accountability from you." He leaned back, arms crossed now, The softness was cracking. I just don't understand why you're being so extreme, he said. This is one conversation that went badly. One conversation where you told me my father wasn't worth investing in, I replied. That's not a small thing. I didn't say that, he shot back immediately. You said his odds weren't good, and that prioritizing him was stupid, I said. What do you call that? He opened his mouth, then snapped it shut, jaw tight. People say dumb things when they're scared, he muttered. And people show who they are when money is involved, I replied. That was when the switch flipped. The warmth vanished. So that's it? He asked sharply. You're just done with me? I didn't say that, I said. I said I'm done funding you. That's the same thing, he snapped. You know it is. No, I replied. That's what it feels like when you've been confusing support with entitlement. He stood up abruptly, pacing now. You're acting like I'm some kind of villain, he said. Like I planned all this. I'm acting like an adult who finally stopped cleaning up messes that aren't hers, I replied. He turned on me. You like being needed. I met his stare. I liked being partnered. There's a difference. The phone rang again. He froze mid-step. Didn't answer. Just stared at it like it might explode. They won't stop, he said quietly. I can't even focus at work anymore. That's what consequences sound like, I replied. He laughed bitterly. You're really enjoying this, aren't you? No, I said. I'm exhausted. That night, he tried one last tactic. He moved closer, lowered his voice, reached for my hand again. Claire, he said, please, I messed up. I know that. But we can fix this. I pulled my hand away. The loans are your problem now, I said. That part is fixed. His eyes hardened. So you're just going to let my life fall apart? I'm not letting anything happen, I replied. You're choosing not to adjust. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he said it. You're being cruel. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't flinch. No, I said. Cruel would have been staying quiet while you showed me exactly who you are. He looked away first. And in that moment, I knew the love bombing was over. What came next wouldn't be gentle. It would be war. The calls started coming every 2 hours. At first, Ryan tried to pretend they weren't happening. He'd silence his phone, flip it face down, push it a little farther away on the table. But phones don't care about denial. They buzz anyway. They light up anyway. They keep score. By the middle of that week, the sound alone was enough to change his mood. Buzz. Jaw tightens. Buzz. Shoulders rise. Buzz. Irritation spills into everything else. They called me 6 times today, he said one evening, dropping his keys louder than necessary, during meetings. I was at the counter reading an email from my dad's oncologist. I looked up. Did you answer? No, what's the point? They just repeat the same script. They repeat it because it works, I said. Eventually. He scoffed. Easy for you to say. I didn't respond. There was nothing to add that wouldn't turn into a fight. A few nights later, he sat down across from me with his laptop open, the same spreadsheet he'd shown me before. This time he'd added more colors, more categories, more highlighting. Look, he said, pushing it toward me. I'm trying to be transparent here. I leaned in and actually studied it. Rent, car payment, insurance, gas, groceries, then extras. Spotify Premium, Netflix, HBO, Hulu. Almost $50 right there. You've got 4 streaming services, I said calmly. Those are basic, he replied immediately. Everyone has them. Your car payment is $480, I continued. That's high. I need a reliable car. You work downtown. You could take the bus. I'm not taking the bus, he snapped, like I'd insulted him. I leaned back. Then don't say you have no options. He rubbed his face, frustration leaking through. You don't get it. If I miss another payment, my credit's going to tank. That already happened, I said. The calls don't start until it does. He stared at me. You're really okay with this? I'm okay with reality, I replied. I'm not okay with pretending your lifestyle is untouchable while asking me to sacrifice mine and my father's. That night, his phone rang during dinner. He let it go to voicemail. Then again, and again. The 4th time, he slammed it face down on the table. They're threatening legal action. Then set up a payment plan, I said. I tried, he shot back. They want proof of hardship. Bank statements, 3 months' worth. Give it to them. They'll see everything, he said sharply. Yes, I replied. They will. He stared at me like I'd betrayed him all over again. They'll see my spending, he muttered. That's usually how accountability works. He stood up abruptly, pacing the room. This is insane. You're just watching me drown. I watched him walk the length of the apartment, then turn back. You're not drowning, I said. You're uncomfortable. There's a difference. He laughed bitterly. Tell that to my credit score. The calls didn't stop. They rang while we watched TV. They rang while he showered. They rang in the middle of the night. Eventually, he stopped answering altogether. Let them pile up in voicemail like an accusation he couldn't bring himself to listen to. One night, after yet another call, he snapped. He grabbed his phone and threw it across the room. It hit the wall with a sharp crack and slid to the floor, screen fractured. "Happy now?" he yelled. "This is what you wanted, right? To watch me suffer?" I stood up slowly. "No," I said evenly. "What I wanted was a partner who didn't tell me to abandon my father." He stared at me, breathing hard. "I didn't mean it like that," he said. "Then how did you mean it?" I asked. "Because that's how it sounded. That's how it landed." He dragged a hand through his hair. "I was scared. About money. About us." "And I was scared about my dad dying," I replied. And somehow I managed not to turn that fear into cruelty. That's when he tried a different approach. He sat down, voice softer now, reaching for my hand. "Claire," he said quietly, "please. I'm sorry. I said it wrong. I was stressed and I took it out on you." I pulled my hand back. "The loans are still your responsibility," I said. "That hasn't changed." His face hardened. "So that's it?" "That's it. You're really going to let my credit get destroyed over this?" "I'm not doing anything," I said. "You are." He stared at me, eyes narrowing. "You're never going to let this go, are you?" I thought about my dad, about hospital rooms and IV poles, about how fragile everything suddenly felt. "Are you ever going to take responsibility for your choices?" I asked. He didn't answer. The phone rang again. From the floor this time, cracked screen lighting up. Collections didn't care about his anger, or his excuses, or his pride. They just kept calling. And with every ring, the truth got louder. This wasn't about one missed payment. This was about a man who'd built his entire sense of stability on someone else's money and couldn't survive the moment it stopped. It didn't take long for Ryan to bring reinforcements. People rarely sit alone with consequences. They outsource them. By the end of week 2, the calls had become part of our daily rhythm, background noise to everything else. Ryan barely flinched anymore when his phone buzzed. He just glanced at it, jaw tightening, then shoved it into his pocket like he could physically hide from what was coming. That Friday evening, I was making dinner when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Something told me not to. "Hello?" There was a pause on the other end. Then a woman's voice, tight and clipped. "This is Ryan's mother." I closed my eyes for a brief second. "Yes?" I said. "I don't know what's going on between you and my son," she continued, not bothering with pleasantries, "but this situation is unacceptable." I leaned against the counter. "Which part?" "The part where he's drowning because of you," she snapped. "He's under an incredible amount of stress. He's not sleeping. He's having trouble at work. And all because you decided to cut him off." "I didn't cut him off," I said evenly. "I stopped paying his student loans." "That's the same thing," she shot back. "No," I replied, "it's not." There was an irritated exhale on the line. "You promised to help him." "I did," I said, "for 13 months. That doesn't mean you get to abandon him now." "I didn't abandon him," I replied. "He told me my father, who has cancer, wasn't our responsibility, so I adjusted my priorities." Silence. Then, colder. "Your father is a grown man." I felt my spine straighten. "So is your son," I said. "And he's the one with the debt." "You're being incredibly selfish," she snapped. "This is not how partners behave." "Neither is threatening to end a relationship because someone won't abandon their sick parent," I replied. "You're going to regret this," she said sharply, "when he leaves you." "I'm looking forward to it," I said. There was a stunned pause. Then the line went dead. I set my phone down slowly, hand steady. From the living room, Ryan called out, "Who was that?" "Your mom," I replied. "She's concerned." He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "What did she say?" "That you're drowning," I said, "and that I'm responsible." He appeared in the doorway, irritation etched across his face. "Well, she's not wrong." I met his eyes. "She is," he scoffed. "You really don't see what you're doing, do you?" "I see it very clearly," I said. "You just don't like what it reveals." That night he barely spoke to me. The next morning, his phone rang again, this time while he was in the shower. I saw his name light up on my screen from across the room. "Mom!" I didn't answer. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. "A text. We need to talk. This has gone far enough." I didn't respond. By Sunday, it wasn't just his mother. His father tried next. Different tone, same goal. "Ryan's under a lot of pressure," he said when I answered. "You know how he gets." "I do," I replied. "That's why I stopped enabling it." There was a heavy pause. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said. "No," I said. "I'm making it honest." He sighed. "Relationships require compromise." "They require mutual respect," I replied. "Your son showed me he doesn't have that." Another pause. Then quietly, "You're going to lose him." I thought of Ryan's words. Second fiddle to a dying man's medical bills. "I already did," I said. I hung up. That afternoon, Ryan exploded. "You talked to my parents?" he demanded. "They talked to me," I replied, repeatedly. You had no right, he snapped. I didn't call them, I said calmly. They called because you asked them to. He froze, then looked away. There it was, the confirmation. You ran to them, I said, instead of fixing your budget. They're my family, he snapped. And my father is mine, I replied. Funny how that only matters when it's you. He paced the room, agitated. They think you're being manipulative. I laughed once, short, sharp. That's rich. They think this is financial abuse, he added. I stopped smiling. Financial abuse, I repeated slowly, tasting the words, is paying someone's debt for over a year while they shame you for helping your dying parent. He stared at me, stunned. What I'm doing, I continued, is called boundaries. His face darkened. This is toxic, he muttered. You're toxic. No, I replied. You're just finally uncomfortable. The room went quiet again. And in that silence, I realized something important. Ryan wasn't fighting for us anymore. He was fighting for the money. And once his parents got involved, once he outsourced his guilt and anger to them, there was no going back. The relationship had crossed a line. Not loudly, but permanently. Ryan stopped arguing with me directly after that. Instead, he changed tactics. When people lose control in private, they try to regain it publicly. The first sign came on a Tuesday evening. I pulled into our apartment complex after work and noticed a familiar car parked a little too close to the entrance. I didn't think much of it until I stepped out and heard my name. Claire. I turned. Ryan's best friend, Mark, was leaning against his car, arms crossed. He had that look people get when they think they're about to deliver a moral verdict. We need to talk, he said. I sighed quietly. I'm guessing this isn't about the weather. He didn't smile. Ryan's falling apart. That's unfortunate, I replied, but not surprising. Mark straightened. You can't just cut someone off like that. I didn't, I said. I stopped paying his student loans. That's the same thing, he snapped. You know it is. I met his eyes. Funny. That's exactly what his mother said. Mark's jaw tightened. He can't sleep. He's having panic attacks at work. His credit score already dropped 60 points. I waited. He frowned. Aren't you going to say anything? I am, I said. He should pay his loans. With what money? Mark shot back. With the money he spends on concerts, brunch, and a car he can't afford, I replied. With the money he had because I was subsidizing him. Mark shook his head. You're punishing him for being honest. No, I said. I'm responding to what he revealed. This is financial abuse, Mark said flatly. I laughed. Not loudly, just once. Financial abuse, I repeated, is paying someone's debt for over a year while they shame you for supporting your dying father. Mark opened his mouth, then closed it. He told you my dad wasn't worth investing in because his odds weren't good, I continued. Then he expected me to keep paying his loans. You tell me what that is. Silence. Mark looked away first. You need to fix this, he said finally, weaker now. No, I replied, I don't. He stared at me like I'd broken some unspoken rule. She's all he has right now, he said. I blinked. She. He caught himself too late. Trish, he said quickly. His ex. She's been talking to him, trying to calm him down. So that was it. The name slid into place like a missing puzzle piece. The comparisons. The sudden language about boundaries. The sense that he'd been coached. Interesting, I said quietly. So when things get hard, he runs to his ex. That's not what I meant, Mark said defensively. They're just talking. Of course they are, I replied. Mark shifted uncomfortably. Look, I'm not here to pick sides. I just don't want to see him crash his life over this. He already did, I said. I just stopped cushioning the impact. He stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head. You've changed, he said. No, I replied. You're just seeing me without the financial benefits. Mark didn't argue after that. He got in his car and drove off without another word. That night, Ryan didn't come home until late. When he did, he was tight-lipped, avoiding my eyes, phone glued to his hand. I didn't need to ask who he was texting. The calls kept coming. Collections didn't care about his support system, or his friends, or his parents. They called anyway. Every 2 hours, like a metronome. By the end of the week, Ryan was unraveling. He snapped at everything, left dishes in the sink, forgot to take out the trash, complained that I was cold and detached. You don't even care anymore, he accused one night. I care, I replied, just not in the way you want. He scoffed. So that's it? You're just done with us? I'm done being responsible for you, I said. There's a difference. He stared at me, eyes hard. You know Trish would never do this to me, he said. There it was, the comparison, out in the open now. That's interesting, I said evenly, because you always said she expected too much from you. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The truth was already there. Ryan didn't want a partner. He wanted a buffer, someone to absorb the discomfort so he never had to grow. And the moment I stopped playing that role, he replaced me emotionally, if not physically, with someone who would tell him what he wanted to hear. That's when I started planning my exit. Quietly, carefully, not out of spite, out of self-respect. By week 6, Ryan was barely functioning. The calls hadn't slowed. If anything, they'd gotten more aggressive. New numbers, earlier hours, weekends included. His phone was never silent anymore. It buzzed during meals, during showers, sometimes even in the middle of the night, vibrating against the nightstand like an accusation he couldn't escape. He stopped answering entirely. Let them pile up. Let the voicemails stack like evidence. One evening, I came home to find him standing in the doorway of the living room, still in his work clothes, backpack slung over one shoulder, like he hadn't fully decided whether to come in or leave again. "I can't do this anymore," he said. I set my bag down slowly. Okay. That wasn't the response he wanted. He blinked. "That's it? Just okay?" "What do you want me to say?" I asked. "That you'll help me," he snapped. "That we'll figure this out together. Something." "We're not together on this," I said evenly. "You made that clear." "I apologized," he shot back. "No," I corrected. "You said you were sorry I was upset. That's not the same thing." He scrubbed a hand down his face, eyes red. Not crying, just worn down. Exhausted in the way people get when consequences refuse to negotiate. "I can't afford to live here anymore," he said finally. "With the loan payments, the collection fees, I'm negative every month. I have to move back in with my parents." "Probably smart," I replied. His head snapped up. "That's all you have to say?" "What do you want?" I asked. "Sympathy?" He laughed, short and bitter. "You created this." "No," I said. "You created this when you told me my father wasn't worth prioritizing. I stopped paying debt that wasn't mine. You refused to change your spending. We both made choices." His hand shook slightly at his sides. "I hate you." I nodded once. "Yeah, I noticed." The move out happened fast after that. Sunday morning, his parents pulled into the parking lot with a rented truck. His father avoided eye contact completely. His mother shot me a look sharp enough to cut glass as she carried boxes past me without a word. Ryan moved through the apartment quietly, efficiently. No arguments, no nostalgia, just logistics. He took his things from the common areas, the coffee maker he'd insisted we needed, the throw pillows he'd picked out, the bookshelf he'd filled with books he never finished. I watched from the kitchen, arms folded, feeling strangely calm. When he reached the door with the last box, he stopped, turned. "I hope your dad dies alone," he said. The words landed heavy, but they didn't break me. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing but distance. "And I hope you learn how to budget," I replied. He flinched, just slightly. Then he set his key on the counter, turned, and walked out. The door closed behind him with a final, solid sound. That night my phone buzzed. "Mark, hope you're happy? He's devastated." I blocked the number. A few minutes later, another call from an unfamiliar number. "Ryan's mother." "You're going to hell for what you did," she hissed the moment I answered. I didn't argue. I just blocked that number too. When the apartment finally went quiet, I stood in the middle of the living room and listened. No buzzing, no pacing, no tension humming under the surface. It didn't feel empty. It felt clean, like something toxic had finally been removed. I slept better that night than I had in months. It's strange how quiet an apartment gets after someone leaves. Not empty, just quiet in a way that lets you hear yourself think again. The first few days after Ryan moved out felt surreal. I kept waiting for his phone to buzz on the counter, for the sharp edge of irritation to creep back into the room, for tension to announce itself the way it always had. None of it came. Instead, the space felt lighter, cleaner, like I'd finally opened a window in a room that had been sealed shut for too long. A few weeks later, my dad finished his last round of chemo. I sat beside him at the hospital room, watching the nurse disconnect the IV line, my chest tight with something that felt dangerously close to hope. The scans came back a few weeks after that. The tumors had shrunk. Not gone, not cured, but smaller. Enough that the doctors used words like cautiously optimistic instead of prepare yourself. My dad was still weak, still recovering, but he was alive. And I was there for all of it. Every appointment, every long drive, every quiet afternoon where he dozed on the couch and I pretended to read while watching his chest rise and fall. The money I'd been spending on Ryan's loans didn't disappear. Half of it still went to my dad. The other half went into a separate savings account, one labeled simply down payment. By the end of the second month, I had nearly $9,000 saved. Not house money yet, but real progress. I heard about Ryan through mutual friends. I hadn't asked, but information has a way of finding you. He was living in his parents' basement now. His credit score had dropped again. Collections were still calling. His parents had helped with 1 month's payment, then told him he needed to figure out the rest on his own. Apparently, that came as a shock. About 6 weeks after he moved out, I got an email from him. A long one. Subject line, "I've been doing a lot of reflecting." I didn't open it right away. Let it sit there for a full day before curiosity finally won. It was filled with therapy language, talk about financial trauma, about growing up with scarcity, about how fear had shaped his reactions, about how he'd projected his anxiety onto me in the relationship. He never actually said I was wrong, just that he was learning, just that he hoped I could understand. I deleted it. No reply. A week after that, Mark showed up again, this time waiting in the parking lot when I got home from work. "I just wanted you to know," he said awkwardly, standing a few feet away like he wasn't sure how close was acceptable. "Ryan's in therapy now. He's actually dealing with his stuff." "Good for him," I said. "He still loves you," Mark added quickly. "He just didn't handle things well." "He loved my bank account," I replied. "That's not the same thing." Mark frowned. "That's not fair." I looked at him. He told me my dying father wasn't worth investing in because his odds weren't good, then expected me to keep paying his debt. You tell me what's fair. Mark didn't answer. He didn't need to. By then, I wasn't angry anymore. Just tired. Tired of people who want all the benefits of partnership without any of the responsibility, who want their problems solved but can't tolerate anyone else's. One evening, while I was helping my dad sort his medications, he asked about Ryan. "Whatever happened to him?" he asked gently. "We broke up," I said. He looked at me for a moment. "What happened?" "She wasn't who I thought he was," I replied. My dad nodded slowly. That knowing parent nod. The one that says, "I see more than I'm saying." "Your mother and I raised you to show up for family," he said. "Sometimes you find out other people were raised differently." "Yeah," I said. "Very differently." I wasn't dating. I wasn't interested. The apartment was peaceful. My weekends were spent with my dad, driving him to appointments, cooking meals together, watching baseball on his couch, laughing at jokes that weren't very funny but felt precious anyway. One afternoon, his neighbor stopped by with a casserole, a widow in her late 50s. Kind eyes, warm smile. After she left, my dad looked at me with a half smile. "What?" I asked. "Nothing," he said. "Just, you're a good daughter, a better person than I was at your age." "You did fine," I replied. "I mean it," he said. "Not everyone would have chosen the way you did." I thought about that later. About choices. Ryan's student loans were his problem now. The collection calls were his soundtrack. The damaged credit was his consequence. He'd spent over a year living beyond his means on my dime, while judging me for keeping my father alive through cancer. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear his words in my head. About odds. About priorities. Then I think about my dad's latest scans. About him laughing on the couch. About him being alive. Ryan was wrong about the odds. Wrong about a lot of things. But he was right about one. Priorities matter. And I'm glad I chose mine. It's funny what stays with you. Not the fights, not the shouting, not even the cruelty. What stays is the moment you realize you didn't hesitate. Months after Ryan left, I was sitting on my dad's couch, watching him slowly work through a bowl of soup I'd made. His hand still shook a little. His appetite still came and went. Recovery wasn't linear, but it was real. Outside, the late afternoon sun filtered through the blinds, painting soft stripes across the living room floor. Ordinary. Peaceful. Alive. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. Unknown number. I didn't answer. It buzzed again, then stopped. A minute later, a text came through. "It's me. I know you blocked my other number. I just wanted to say, I see things differently now. Ryan." I stared at the screen longer than I expected to. Not because I missed him, but because I wanted to check something inside myself. There was no spike of adrenaline, no anger, no curiosity about what he'd say next. Just stillness. I locked my phone and set it face down. Some conversations don't deserve a response, not because you're bitter, but because you're done. A few days later, I heard through a mutual friend that Ryan's consolidation loan had been denied again. His credit score had dropped below a threshold that made even basic refinancing impossible. He was working overtime now, cutting expenses he'd once called non-negotiable. Selling the car, canceling subscriptions, skipping trips, things he could have done months ago. Things he only did once no one else was paying. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt confirmation. Around that same time, my dad had a follow-up appointment. The oncologist smiled, actually smiled, when she walked into the room. "Stable," she said. "Improving. Not cured, not guaranteed, but improving. On the drive home, my dad was quiet for a while. Then he said, "You know, when you were younger, I worried I pushed you too hard to be responsible." I glanced at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said slowly, "I always told you to do the right thing, to show up, to take care of people. I worried one day someone would take advantage of that." I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. "Maybe they tried," I said, "but it didn't work." He nodded, satisfied. That night, I transferred money to my savings account like I'd been doing every month. Down payment fund. 5 figures now. Progress that felt earned, not extracted. The apartment still felt peaceful. I'd rearranged the furniture slightly, donated a few things Ryan left behind, changed the space just enough that it felt fully mine. No buzzing phones, no tension, no walking on eggshells. Just quiet. Occasionally, people still tried. Ryan's mother called from another number once. I recognized the area code and declined it without a second thought. Mark sent one last message. "He's really changed. He's learning. He misses you." I didn't respond. Change that comes after consequences isn't something you owe a second chance. It's something you observe from a distance. One evening, while cleaning out an old folder on my laptop, I found the document Ryan and I had written together over a year ago. The agreement. The one where he promised to pay me back. I read it once, then deleted it. Not because it hurt, but because it no longer mattered. I wasn't carrying resentment anymore. I was carrying clarity. People tell you relationships are about compromise, about sacrifice, about choosing each other. That's true, up to a point. But real partnership doesn't ask you to abandon your values, or your family, or your humanity. It doesn't reduce love to numbers and odds. It doesn't demand you bleed quietly so someone else can stay comfortable. Ryan taught me something he never meant to, that the fastest way to learn someone's priorities is to stop funding them. My father is alive, recovering, laughing at bad jokes. My savings are growing. My home is peaceful, and my conscience is clear. Priorities matter, and I chose mine. If you're listening to this story and it feels familiar, maybe because you've been the one who carried the weight, the one who kept sacrificing, the one who was always expected to understand and give more, then I want you to hear this. You are not selfish for setting boundaries. You are not cruel for stopping the funding of someone else's irresponsibility. And you are not wrong for choosing your family, your values, and your conscience. Real love does not require silent suffering. Healthy relationships are not built on uneven sacrifice. And no one gets to call you heartless just because you stopped rescuing them from their own choices. Thank you for staying until the end of this story. If you've been through something similar, share it in the comments. You're not alone. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel and help stories like this continue to be told. I'll see you in the next video. And in the meantime, take care of yourself.